Amen. So a couple of questions to begin with. If I asked you, do you have a full house? And now some of you would be saying, well, I don't play poker, Pastor. I don't know what you're talking about. Do you have a full house? I'm not speaking of cards. But how would you answer that question? What would you define as a full house? Would that mean you have a lot of children? Is that what it means to have a full house? Maybe in one sense. Is your house full in a spiritual sense? See, I believe every house is a full house. The question is, what is it full of? Every house is a full house. We're all filling our lives with things. So I would say the answer to the blessing of a full house is we all have a full house, but what is your house full of, and is it blessed? Is it blessed? And that title is based on something I'll explain to you next week. So I'm not going to explain that to you today, but that's what we're going to be talking about. The second question I have for you, outside of and next to what is your house a full house, the question is, how do you answer this question? What is the purpose of family? Write that down. Use it as a talking point over lunch or dinner. And I will warn you, it's a long sermon today, so settle in. I hope you brought lunch. No, not that long. But what is the purpose of family? I mean, that may be more challenging to answer than you thought. Answer it, you don't get 3 paragraphs and 250 words. Try to do it in 1 or 2 sentences. I think you should be able to clarify that succinctly. If you understand it, I think you can clarify it succinctly. It's a tough question to answer. Is it for procreation? I mean, maybe that's part of it, but people can procreate outside of marriage and family. We're doing that. People are doing that now. What is the purpose of family? How do you define family? Shouldn't we be able to do this? I mean, if we're going to engage in building something, shouldn't we have a blueprint for what in the world we're building and what it's supposed to be used for? I'm a simple guy, and I watched 2019, and I know there's some, I look around, I know there's some basketball fans in here. 2019, March Madness, all these teams start showing up in these practice jerseys, and what do they say on them? Some of you know. They don't have their team name, they say family. And I thought that was, do you guys know what I'm talking about? Some of you do. They say family. And I thought that was so interesting because they have behind that a definition of what they think family is or why they're putting that on their jerseys. And I was just thinking, well, are they? Is that team a family? Well, then what makes a family? What's the definition? So I come with questions, and hopefully by the time we're done, we'll be able to answer these questions better. I know I grew up probably like some of you in front of the television set, and so I had a lot of family examples given to me when I was growing up. Did you? How many of you remember the Cleaver family? We're going to take a walk down memory lane together. So Ward and June, they were held up at a certain time, the 50s, and here's this picture of a family. But then I remember as a teenager, do anybody remember the Bunker family? Oh, man. That show would never fly today. That was a rough couple, weren't they? Some of you go, that was my family, the Bunker family, Edith and Archie. Then we had blended family, the Brady Bunch. Now we've got a blended family. How many of you remember the Jeffersons? Yeah. George and Louise. You remember the theme song for the Jeffersons? They were moving on up. They were an upwardly mobile African-American family. Now, the one I got to tell you I connect with the most, I'm not sure why, the Clampett family. Anybody remember the Beverly Hillbillies? Oh, man, now Jed was a widow. I don't know if you knew that or you remember that. Jed was a widow. And who ruled the family? Granny ruled the family. So family is a difficult topic, a difficult subject to wrap our minds around. Recently, I haven't seen it, but I did my research. 2014, the world was introduced to the Pfefferman family. Anybody know that one? Good. Well, I didn't know yet. It's a show called Transparent, and it is about what the name suggests it's about a dad who comes to his family and opens up as trans, and now the family has to sort of deal with all that comes with that. Now, again, I haven't seen the show, so I can't describe it to you, but this is 2014, so quite a number of years ago, dealing with those issues in terms of family. But of all that, my question to you, and I'm going to take some time to build a foundation and intro to this whole topic, my question is, what about your experience with family? Every one of us has it. Whether we liked it or not, we were conceived and we were birthed apart from our consent. We didn't agree to it. We didn't sign a contract. We weren't asked our opinion on it. We just showed up on planet Earth. And we were born into something, a group of people was around us that somehow was charged with explaining to us what life was like and how life worked and how family worked and how relationships worked. These are the people that would explain the world to you. You didn't have a choice as to where you would be born. By the way, being born in America puts you at the top of the blessing chart of around the world. You didn't choose that. You didn't choose to be born in America. You were blessed. You were born here. And then what time period? Being born in this century or the century that you were born in, that wasn't your choice. And again, around here, just like in our shows, we have divorced families and remarried families and blended families and people that were adopted and people that have been fostered. Single parents, by the way, my hat and heart is off to you in terms of what it takes as a single parent to raise a family. Some of you have been thrust into that situation. It is not easy. So hats off to you for endeavoring to do that, and even endeavoring, if you're hearing me, to be in church, bringing your kids here as well. So family is how you learn about life. How does the world work? How do I fit in? How do I get my needs met? What qualifies as food? I'm finding this is an interesting discussion with my toddler granddaughter, seeing what she chooses to try to eat. No, that's not food. You don't put that in your mouth. Now, food is anything that's on the floor, but nothing that's on your tray table. That's what I'm learning. If it's on the tray table in front of me, I'm not interested in eating it, but the minute it's on the floor, now I'm interested. I can't explain that, but I'm just making observations. Animal babies come out hitting the ground running, but human babies are dependent, needy, fragile. Jesus comes into the world as a human baby. How long are babies dependent for? 1, 2, 30? Yeah, 30 years? In this book, The Gendered Brain, this was written by a woman who works in the field of neuroscience. She talks about how, as a child, you are given a template for what relationships are supposed to be like, or how the world works, how relationships work, how family works. She says, our understanding of the rules of social engagement that determine our place in the world and our journey through it may be based on biased information on guidelines which are no longer fit for purpose, if they ever were. And I'm taking the time to belabor the point because some of you have grown up in families that the information you were given was based on it was biased, and the guidelines you received don't really apply to your Christian life. And now you're here in church going, well, how do I sort out what family's supposed to look like? How do I sort out what God wants? And so first you have to understand there were maybe some information I was given that wasn't correct in terms of what God wants for family. She says, we have always known that the early years are a time of enormous plasticity in the brain, underpinning all the necessary skills that our helpless human infants have to acquire. She goes on to say, we now know, consistent with our understanding of the importance of connectivity in the brain, we now know that most of these changes are associated with the establishment of many different pathways in the brain as a baby. Basic survival skills come easily and quickly. We know babies soon learn to make sense of the sensory, perceptual information in their world, begin to move efficiently around the world. So they experiment, explore their environment. They're learning about what gravity is. They learn that a lot, balance, things like that. But we are beginning to understand that these tiny humans, which you once were, who appear so helpless at birth, which you once were, are actually highly sophisticated, rule-hungry scavengers who, with their plastic, flexible, moldable brains, are focused much more than we ever knew on learning the rules of social engagement in their world, and that they start very, very, very early. Kids have the ability to cry to get their needs met, but the most important thing a child is born with is the ability to mimic. To mimic. We are wired to imitate what we see. The other day, I'm always going to make a shameless plug for my beautiful grandchildren. You're used to that now. And the other day I was picking up my 2.5-year-old toddler granddaughter, and she looked at me, uncoerced, uninitiated by me, not in response to me, and she said, "I love you, Papa." I know, right? That's how I felt. And as my heart immediately liquefied and poured out onto the ground. It melted. So once I got it picked back up, I had a minute to reflect on what just happened. Now, this is just true right from the experience myself. I began to think about what it took for her to have some kind of feeling inside of her that she, by 2.5-year-old, is now interpreting that's what love is. And so when she felt it, uninitiated by me or unprompted by me, she expressed that feeling with the word love. Now, where did she learn that? She's never read a dictionary. She's never been to class. Where does she learn that? She learns it in family. It's where, matter of fact, that's where we learn everything when we're growing up, is in family. Some of what you learned is phenomenal and fantastic. Others of you have had less than perfect experiences. We've all had less than perfect experiences. Some of them have been damaging, abusive, hurtful, and very painful. And I know that. And so listen to me tell you that as we go across and talk about these things, I know that where you are coming from, I feel for you. And my hope is that you will come running to Jesus and running to his family to learn what love looks like, what family looks like, what relationships in a family are supposed to be, because the likelihood that you learned it in your family may be slim. In America, a lot of very difficult family relationships. Some of you, very great families you've come from, others not so much. You got to learn this. So the good news is, guess what? Can you learn, church? We're here because we're here to learn from God. God, I want to know what you say family looks like. I want to know what you say husband means. I want to know what you say wife means. I want to know what you say parenting means. I want to know from you. I want to go to the source, because there's a lot of other sources out there. Church, come on, you know it's true, don't you? I read this article. This is from The Atlantic, March 2020. The title of the article is "The Nuclear Family Was a Mistake." Then the subtitle says, "The family structure we've held up as the cultural ideal for the past half century has been a catastrophe for many." I don't disagree with that. It's time to figure out better ways to live together. In other words, what the article is saying is that the problem is with the plan that's caused the catastrophe, and we know that's not true. The problem with family is not that somehow there's a bad blueprint. The problem is my inability to carry it out in my own power. I would never want to attempt to be a father and a husband without having a blueprint for what in the world I'm supposed to be doing. There is no worse place to be than in family, parenting, raising kids without any idea what I'm supposed to, what it's for. What am I doing? So, there was another one I quoted this morning, and I'm not going to quote it this service, but just understand there are many, many institutions out there that are designed with undermining the nuclear family structure, and as God has intended it. So I think all the language in the Bible is family. The church is the extended family of God, not a business, not a club. We are a family. So we can't do church right unless we know what family's supposed to look like and what it's for. We have, in Ephesians, God, this is what started this whole thing for me, and will continue in Ephesians. The Bible says God is the father of all fatherhood, or the father of all families. That's in the book of Ephesians. We also learn in the Bible that God is a father to the fatherless. I love that verse. I think it's the Psalms that tell us that God puts the solitary in families. All these things very hopeful. So as we read about family, as we talk about family, we're in the book of Genesis. We're going to discuss the roles and relationships and how the people in those roles are meant to relate to each other. And some of you will connect easily with the picture, and others are going to struggle with a negative response to the picture. And I'm asking you to have an open heart and hear from God and know that maybe what you've experienced is not what God's plan was from the beginning. So are you ready? Judging by your quiet, I already feel that weight. Is this a weighty subject to you guys? Are you okay? You hanging with me? Yeah? Are you scared? Are you nervous? Are you hopeful? All right. You tell me at the end, if you don't leave here encouraged, then I'll have Nick play another song. I mean, this to me, I could not wait. This is great information. Great information. So this excites me. I think it's very evangelistic. I mean, if people don't run to God after this, I don't know what's stopping you. Genesis chapter 1. If you're there, go to verse 24. I'm going to roll through this. This is not meant to be verse by verse, in-depth Bible study, but meant to just paint a picture of family relationships, because we're going to see what broke the family unit. How did it start? How did it break? Because no matter what kind of family you grew up in, it was broken. It was broken. The best of you was raised by parents who wrestled with selfishness and sin. Forgiven by God, possibly if you grew up in a Christian home. But still, the best of us have been raised by imperfect parents. Amen? They did their best. You hope they did their best, but they can't give you what only God can give you. Only God the Father is the perfect Father. So Genesis 1 is an overview of creation, and we're going to focus on the sixth day, the day that the creatures, including mankind, are created. Then when we get to chapter 2, it'll seem like it's repeating itself, but what we're doing is dialing in more specifically to the creation where God wants us to look, the creation of man and woman. So we'll get the fact that they are created in chapter 1, but then chapter 2 we'll get some more specifics. So are you with me? Yes, verse 24 says, "Then God said, let the earth bring forth the living creature according to its kind, cattle and creeping thing and beast of the earth, each according to its kind. And it was so. And God made the beast of the earth according to its kind, cattle," you can almost repeat with me, "according to its kind, and everything that creeps on the earth according to its kind. And God saw that it was good." There is something being emphasized, that God decides, okay, I'm going to create cow or giraffe. So God creates cow or giraffe, and then every other cow or giraffe looks like the one that he started with. He makes a pattern, and he follows the pattern. This is true all throughout human history. It's the law of biogenesis. Like always begets like. Cats always have kittens. Or your cat's pregnant, you don't go downstairs and go, "Look at that, puppies." Has that ever happened to anybody? I want to meet you. If it happened to you, it's a law. And it's a law, it's clearly stated right there in the Bible. Like begets like. And it was good. Verse 26 says, "Then God said," now watch the pattern break, "Let us," notice the pluralness of that, the plurality, "let us make man in our image according to our likeness." That is crazy. First of all, we've got a creator God. You can't get anywhere until you realize that you're not an evolutionary accident. You were created by God. And that is what gives you value, because God created you. Now, this is fantastic. Verse 26, when it comes to mankind, when it comes to you and me, God says, I'm going to use the Trinity, God the Father, God the Son, at least in this case, say we are going to use ourselves as a pattern when it comes to mankind. Did you know that? Did you realize that? I mean, we talk about being created in the image of God, but did you realize that the word image is a representative figure? The same word used in the Old Testament of making an idol, a statue of some invisible God. I'm going to make it visible by building a statue so we can worship it. Same word. That when the Father and Son decided to create mankind, they said, let's make them like us. They'll resemble us. You know, your kids tend to resemble you, right? And you're here, and you look like you look because you were created in the image of God. And not just an individual God, the plurality, the Trinity, God the Father, God the Son, God the Spirit, communicating within themselves, not just about how we look, but about how we interact. God is one essence, one nature, but in three distinct persons. One, but three. And so he says, let's make man in our image and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, over the birds of the air, over the cattle, over all the earth, and every creeping thing that creeps on the earth. By the way, my thoughts on the matter are that evolutionary biology leaves no answer for the stable family. In evolutionary biology, it's advantageous for the strong, the male who is the strongest, to interface and interact. It's a family service, so I'll say that, physically, intimately with as many females as he can for propagating his DNA because he's the strongest. So evolutionary biology is not promoting, that as a concept does not promote the nuclear monogamous family. You want that? You got to get it from God. And so we tell kids, raise them up in a system that says there's no God. Nothing has any meaning. And then no wonder people aren't getting married today. Because why? Who cares? What's marriage for anyway? We don't know. Let's just live together. We'll have some fun, have some kids, figure out what that's all about. But there's no stability to it. People, children thrive in stable relationships. So evolutionary biology doesn't create that. Verse 27, so God created man or mankind in his own image. In the image of God, he created him. Here we go, male and female, he created them. Then God blessed them, and God said to them, be fruitful and multiply, fill the earth and subdue it, have dominion over the fish of the sea, over the birds of the air, and over every living thing that moves on earth. So again, I'm not getting into this as a verse-by-verse, in-depth Bible study, just to lay the groundwork. Did you notice that male and female are created equal but different? Both male and female created in the image of God. Isn't that what it says right there? You got a Bible, I got a Bible, I just read it right there. In the image of God, he created him, male and female, two genders, by the way. I didn't make it up, I didn't write it, Spirit of God wrote it. And let me ask you, is that not our experience? Is our experience, there are two biological genders. I know there's a big fight over gender identity. I talked with a wonderful young girl after first service about such things, and wonderful conversation about it. But there are two genders. They are equally reflecting, or made to equally reflect the personality, the essence of God. Women and men. Very different. Do we have to argue that point, that the men and women are different? They're not interchangeable. And neither of them are disposable. As a matter of fact, in reading about such things, to make a family, to make a child, to make a fetus, some people thought, well, we can maybe it's just 46 chromosomes. You got 46 chromosomes in you. Maybe it doesn't matter their source. Maybe we can just have 23 male and 23 female, or we could have 23 male and 23 male and get 46 male or female. Maybe it doesn't matter. And they try to do that in test tube situation, scientific situation, and guess what they found? They were never, ever, I can give you the book. It's not a Christian book. I can show you the source. Never able to produce a viable fetus where all of the genetic material was from the same gender. And they said, this is in the book, it quoted, they said, it's almost as if the chromosomes know the difference. God has wired gender and male and female into us and into our genetic material. Now again, if you want to talk about these things, I'm willing to have more conversation. My question to you today is because we deal with cultural things, and I know I'm preaching all this stuff in the age of feminism and transgender and all that stuff. My question to you is, do you realize that you were created by God, and can you thank God for how he created you? See, I find too many people are too busy complaining about themselves. I found as I've talked to people, and I'm just being honest with you, I found that as I've talked to people, almost every human being I have talked to has in some time in their life wished they were somebody else. Usually I'll ask the question, and if you've been through head to heart with us, I'll say, do you hate yourself? And people say, ooh, that's kind of strong. I don't know about that. Some of you would say absolutely. But others will say, if I say, do you ever wish you were different? And most people, almost everybody I've talked to would say, yes, I've sometimes wished I was somebody else. So it's a normal human experience. It's caused by sin, caused by the fall. But we all experience it. So if we can talk about it, it doesn't become mysterious anymore. We can say, yeah, I've experienced that. So the challenge is to accept how God created me and to reconcile with that. There's parts of me, there's parts of you that go, if only I was this. If only I was, the women with blonde hair want to have dark hair. The women with dark hair want to have blonde hair. Some of us would just love to have hair. You think how many movie stars do you see that are leading men that have male pattern baldness? I didn't have a choice in the matter. That's how I was born. My dad's bald, my brother's bald. And so I have two choices. I can complain about it and wish I was somebody else, or I can accept it and realize that this is the way God created me. Who is the potter? Who is the clay to say to the potter, why'd you make me this way? So if you're male, if you're female, here's the challenge. Can you sit down and say, God, thank you for making me how you made me? And accepting that. And learning to express the image of God through the gender that God gave you. By the way, one more note, and then we'll go into Genesis 2. Darwinian evolutionary theory is at an utter loss to explain gender evolution. From a genetic theory, from an evolutionary theory perspective, asexual reproduction it takes much less energy. It's much simpler. You don't have to go through the whole dating process, flowers, and where are we going to eat, all that kind of stuff. A lot simpler. Asexual reproduction. It is to be, from an evolutionary energy standpoint, it should be the dominant mode of reproduction. So evolutionary biologists go, well, we don't understand why sexual reproduction is the predominant method. So just leave you with that to think about. Go to chapter 2. Now we get some of the details. We'll roll through this pretty quickly and touch on chapter 3 in a few minutes. Genesis 2, the details, the Lord God formed or squeezed like a potter. He's forming the man of the dust of the ground and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and man became a living being or a soul. So Adam formed from the dust. That's why men like to play in the dirt and like dirty things. We just connect dirt. And he becomes a living being, a soul with thoughts and desires and emotions and decision-making processes. And God, look at this, men. God breathed life into the first man. That is extremely scientific. You've heard me talk about that before. Life always gives rise to life. We never see non-living things all of a sudden become alive, ever. But if you believe in evolutionary biology, you believe that at some point in history there was something that was not alive that gave yield somehow to being alive or became alive itself. Then if you believe in Darwinian evolution, you believe in miracles. Just acknowledge that. So Adam gets God's life. That's the life, the air we now breathe, the air in your lungs, you are a direct recipient of the air that was breathed into Adam's nostrils, into his lungs, that gave him life. That's why the human race exists. The Lord God planted a garden, verse 8, eastward Eden, and there he put the man whom he had formed. Out of the ground the Lord God made every tree grow that is pleasant to the sight and good for food. The tree of life was also in the midst of the garden, and the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Then the Lord took the man, put him in the Garden of Eden to tend and to keep it. And the Lord God commanded the man, notice that he commanded the man because the woman is not created yet. We're getting the details. So before Eve exists, God is communicating with the man, and he's giving him instructions. He says, man, Adam, of every tree of the garden you may freely eat. So the first command is positive. Man, Adam, go have a good time. Enjoy yourself. I made it all for you. God is good, isn't he? I made it all for you. Go enjoy it. But there's one thing that you are not to touch. You got to trust me. How many of you have kids? How many of you can explain why they should not eat the whole bottle of vitamins because they taste like candy? And trust me, you can't eat the whole bottle of vitamins because they're medicine. They're not candy because they taste good. And they can't understand that. They just have to trust us, right? Isn't that what you want from your kids? Don't you want them to trust you? And now God is saying to Adam, you just got to trust me about this thing. That's between Adam and God. And the Lord said, it's not good. First thing that's not good, that man should be alone. I will make him a helper comparable to him. Thus we have the reasoning, the mind of God behind the creation of Eve or wife. Adam would look around, and you'll see God is going to parade all the animals. Adam is going to look around and see that there was no one like himself to relate to. There is no one else on planet Earth created in the image of God. There is God, and there are the animal creatures, and then there's Adam, who is, in a sense, relationally alone. Now, he wasn't alone because he has God, right? Adam has a relationship with God, so he's not completely alone, but in terms of who can relate to him, my opinion, this creation of Eve is to give Adam someone who was different from him, but yet someone who could relate to and share the experience of being human with. And I think someone to share the enjoyment of being created in the image of God. Because if God is love, and he is, then to fully express the image of God in my life, I need someone to what, church? I need someone to love. That is how you begin to express the image of God. Isn't the first commandment, love God with all your heart? The second is like it. What is it, church? Love. Love your neighbor as yourself. And so now, Adam and Eve are going to serve together. They're going to work together. And I think families and marriages where the husband and wife are serving the Lord together, I think that's some of the most beautiful marriages, where we say we're going to serve the Lord together. So they're apart. So Adam and Eve, there's no sense, listen carefully, church, there's no sense of superiority and inferiority, is there? Does anybody get that from reading that? Did you read that anywhere in the Bible, that the male is superior to female and female is inferior to male? What we have is two people created equally in the image of God who have different roles. And God had to choose. Zig Ziglar said, even a parade of two cars, one has to take the lead. So God could have chosen to create Eve first. And then all the men would be going, well, why can't I be first? It's just that God made a sovereign choice to create the man first. It's just a choice. It wasn't because the man was more skilled or better or anything like that. Some of you guys would say, man, did you marry up? Any guys in here that married up? You know what I mean when I say that? I'll talk about this more when I get into the role of the wives. My wife is, so much of who I am today. This church has the fingerprint of my wife on it. She designed it and helped bring it into creation. She oversaw our building project. That's not a real feminine thing. We get caught up in it. Well, this is the man brain does this, and the women brain does that, and the men have this. And I've talked with young folks, young guys, that are experiencing feelings of compassion and feelings of love and deep sensitivity. And they're beginning to question, well, maybe I'm not a man. And I say, well, was Jesus a man? Jesus was a man. Pilate stood him there and said, behold the man. Was Jesus compassionate? Jesus was the quintessential man. He was the man that undoes all the first man did wrong. He is a man. Is Jesus compassionate? Did children, so sometimes guys say, well, the women, that they take care of the kids. We go and do this manly stuff. Jesus loved kids, and kids loved Jesus. And what we're talking about here, when we talk about being created in the image of God, there's going to be no to-do list here in a minute. What there is the fruit of the Spirit. And sometimes we think, well, there's the fruit of the Spirit for men. Doesn't that sound like deodorant? The fruit of the Spirit for men. And then there's the fruit of the Spirit for women. And there's the fruit of the Spirit for kids. It's all the same. It's all the same. The Spirit of God producing in man and woman love and joy and peace and patience and kindness and, guys, gentleness. It's part of the fruit of the Spirit for a man to be gentle. And the Lord created this woman not lower than him, but to be a helper, a counterpart. They would serve God together. The word used of her is an etzer, E-Z-E-R in Hebrew, and it literally means helper, and it's most often used in the Old Testament of God. The word etzer is used of God and his relationship to Israel. When Israel got in trouble, when Israel was under attack, when Israel was going through something difficult, they would sing Psalm 33. They would say, our soul waiteth for the Lord. He is our etzer, our help and our shield. And then they would sing Psalm 121. I will lift my eyes up to the hills from whence comes my etzer, my help. My help comes from the Lord. See, husbands, You can get up in the morning, you can look at your wives, and you can say, my help, my etzer comes from the Lord. Your wife is there, she's from the Lord. My etzer comes from the Lord, who made heaven and earth. One quick side note, because as we go through this, I know many of you are single. You've been divorced, or you've never been married. You're not sure if you want to get married. So what about all this marriage stuff and relationship stuff and family stuff? Jesus offers to you to be your husband. Whether you're male or female, you can be married to Jesus. You can embrace singleness and still experience the beauty of family life. You can experience that also here in the church community. The church, is God's answer to the world's failure for family. It's not just my little family, but it's us, it's all of us. We are the family of God. We are the family that starts not with Adam in the garden, but starts with Jesus in a different garden, the Garden of Gethsemane, where Adam disobeyed God. In the Garden of Eden, Jesus obeyed God in the Garden of Gethsemane and went to the cross. In Adam, all of humanity experienced condemnation and failure and guilt and shame. In Christ, anyone who trusts him will experience forgiveness and grace and eternal life. 2 men, 2 gardens, 2 vastly different experiences, 2 vastly different families. Let's roll on. Out of the ground, the Lord God formed every beast of the field, every bird of the air, brought them to Adam to see what he would call them, and whatever Adam called each living creature, that was its name. So Adam gave names to all the cattle, to the birds of the air, to every beast of the field. But for Adam, there was not found a helper comparable to him. And the Lord God caused a deep sleep to fall on Adam, stuck him in front of the TV or the remote, no doubt, and he slept. And he took one of his ribs and closed up the flesh in its place. Isn't that fascinating? I mean, God creates Adam from the dirt, from the dust of the earth, creates him, and then breathes life into him. God could have done the same for Eve. He could have taken Eve. Now he goes, well, I'm going to get this dirt with some flowers in it over here. You know, it'll smell nicer or something. And now I'm going to breathe life into her. But that's not what he does. In the word, it says he made into a woman. The word is he built. He built Eve out of Adam. Now, do I understand all the implications of that? I don't. I don't understand all the implications of this, but I do understand what it's supposed to mean for us. So Adam, then the rib which the Lord God had taken from man, he built into a woman, and he brought her to the man, to Adam. Now, up until now, the word Adam has been used for man, and it's a neutral word. That means human. But now we see a switch in verse 23. Now God brings Eve to Adam. She's not called Eve yet. Doesn't name her till later. And he makes this declaration. It's a song. It's a poem. It's the first wedding vows. He says, "This is now bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh. She shall be called woman because she was taken out of man." Now, I'll try to spare you from all the common pastoral humor, that when Eve came to Adam, he sees her for the first time and he says, "Whoa, man." And that's why she got the name woman, and that's all the common things. But it's so much more than that. Look what he says. He makes this declaration. He speaks poetry over her. He says, "This is now bone of my bone." Oh, now someone I can relate to. Now someone who is like me. Someone who bears the same image. This is now bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh. And because of that, she will be called Isha, woman, or wife, because she was taken out of Ish. First use of the word Ish for man, and it means man or husband. And so we see this more than a vow. What Adam seems to be saying is that he is now making a commitment to her of loyalty and protection based on the fact that now he is connected to this woman who shares with him the image of God. Fantastic. And so he speaks a wedding vow. And that's why verse 24 follows. Therefore, that's why an Ish, a husband, shall leave his father and mother and be joined, glued or cemented to his wife in a new family unit, and they shall become one flesh. And they were both naked, the man and his wife, and were not ashamed. Now, that's a weird thing to put there, isn't it? I mean, this is where the job description is supposed to go. They were both naked, the man and his wife, and here's the job description. She is going to take out she's going to do the cooking, and he's going to do the bills. He's going to take out the trash, and she's going to care for the kids. Do you see anywhere in the Bible where there's a job description for this is what the man does and this is what the woman does? What we see is two people leaving their family, not dependent on family, not dependent on birth for how family works, or blaming. Husbands, you get to start your own family, make your own mistakes. Search God, seek God for yourself. And the important thing is that they become one, like the Father and Son, and that unity, that love, that they two become one. They were naked and not ashamed. They were in each other's presence, face to face, totally open, vulnerable, no fear, no shame, no hiding, no lying, no deceitfulness, very much at peace with one another, and that is what marriage was created to be. That's like fantasy land for a lot of people. I mean, that's like, wow, I can't even understand that. But it says it right there. You're meant to know the emotions they experienced before the fall. There was no shame. Chapter 3, now the serpent was more cunning than the beast of the field, which the Lord God had made. He said to the woman, note, he doesn't talk to the man, he bypasses the man. He wants to go right to the woman. He's going to undermine the husband and go right to the wife. Has God indeed said, you shall not eat of every tree in the garden? Now we enter the serpent, whose plan it is to undermine the first family, to break it. Anywhere you see people breaking family, you see Satan. And that is why, listen carefully, Ephesians 6 follows Ephesians 5. Because once you're going to talk about family, when you're going to try to endeavor to live properly and relationally in family, you are going to experience spiritual attack. You will. You have. And the woman said to the serpent, we may eat of the fruit of the trees of the garden, but of the fruit of the tree which is in the midst of the garden, God has said, you shall not eat it, nor shall you touch it, lest you die. So evidently, Adam has passed on to Eve the command of God, because she knows. She's talking to the serpent, and Adam has passed on, hey, we can eat of all these trees, but this one is a no-no, and my husband says don't even touch it. That's he added a little to the word of God. I get that. Eve, just don't even touch it. Verse 4, and then the serpent said to the woman, watch it unravel, you will not surely die. So the serpent boldly declares to the woman, your husband is lying to you, and your God is lying to you. Now, I know lies are real. People have been lied to. I get that. And people have been hurt by lies in marriages and in families, and so I get that. But what happens as a result of the fall is there is this underlying message that comes from the fall right here, is that I can't trust God and I can't trust anybody. And so we see that's where this comes from. You can never live out God's plan for your life if you do not trust God. It just will never happen. It always is based on trusting God. For God knows that in the day you eat of it, your eyes will be opened, which is a lie. And you, not completely. They were going to die by eating it, but you will become like God, knowing good and evil. So when the woman saw that the tree was good for food, that it was pleasant to the eyes, and a tree desirable to make one wise, she took of its fruit and ate. So she assessed the situation for herself. She does not consult her husband, and she disobeys God. She eats what was prohibited. And then she gave to her husband, who was accompanying her, and he ate. Now, this is so true to life. You know, when you think about the Bible and you read the Bible, you go, how can we trust the Bible is the Word of God? I don't read the Bible reads me. I mean, if I'm not a blamer and I'm not tending to silence when it comes to the things of God, then and you know that for yourself. The silence of Adam here, he never speaks up. The wife gives him, now he had a choice. Did Adam not have a choice? What could Adam have said? If you were Adam, you put yourself in that situation, put yourself in that scene. Eve takes a bite of the apple, or whatever it is, whatever the fruit is. And then she says, here, honey, tastes great, have a bite. You're Adam, what do you do? Do you choose to fall with your wife? Some would say that's a noble thing. He chose to fall with his wife rather than to stand for God. This is a tough story. I'm thinking that Adam should have stood with God. Now, the big thing about this is that why didn't Adam say something? Why do we see him be silent? And so many husbands, so many Adams after this, silent spiritually, silent in their families when it comes to the wife is now the one in charge, the husband is the passive participant, and he never speaks up. Because again, what's the underlying message in the husband's life? I'm desperately afraid of failure. I'd rather do nothing and blame you when it goes wrong than to actually make a choice myself and maybe risk being wrong. Adam was silent, and the first family falls into distrust. Look at verse 7. Then the eyes of both of them were opened, not physically. They were already able to see. She could see the fruit that looked good. They're using their eyes, but now they see everything different. The result of the fall is you see everything differently. And they knew they were naked. They saw themselves. They saw their own nakedness. And they sewed fig leaves together and made themselves coverings. So what do we see happening? They're naked and unashamed in front of one another, but now what's happening? Now all of a sudden, there's shame comes in. And they're afraid to show the other one who they really are. Even if they could, now the relationship has become fractured because of shame. They cover themselves. This person cannot know who I really am. And they heard the sound of the Lord God walking in the garden in the cool of the day, and Adam and his wife hid themselves in the presence of the Lord God among the trees. So they're hiding from each other. Now they're hiding from God. And the Lord God called to Adam and said, "Where are you?" Notice who God speaks to. Who's he speaking to? He doesn't say, Eve, where are you? He says, Adam. Why? Adam was created first. Adam is the head of the family. Adam is responsible for his wife and for them following the Lord. And so now, again, there's some single moms. In the absence of a husband in your family, you always go right to Jesus. It's not like but in a marriage relationship, you got to at least communicate with your husband. You guys should talk about stuff. And we'll talk about that as we move forward in the days to come. But here, God says to Adam, "Where are you?" What a great question. God is the seeker. And he's saying to men, to you husbands today, he's saying, "Where are you? With respect to me, why are you hiding from me?" Maybe that's speaking to someone here. So Adam said, "I heard your voice in the garden." So he spoke up. He's not going to hide from God. God knows exactly. Does God know where Adam is? Come on, hang with me. We're almost done. I told you it was going to be long. Your pastor didn't lie to you. Does God know where Adam is? Then why does he ask him? What God is seeking for from you and from every other human being is a confession of failure. I have blown it. I'm not perfect. I disobeyed because God forgives. And it's, confess your sins. Confess your sins. And it's so healthy to hear yourself say it, "I was wrong." But Adam, he doesn't go there. He says, "Well, I heard your voice in the garden. I was afraid because I was naked." So now he's got this inherent fear of God. There's no reason. God hasn't beat him up. God hasn't done anything to him. God is the same. Yesterday, today, and forever. Has God changed? The only thing that's changed is Adam has developed fear based on the fall. So he hid himself. And he said, "Who told you were naked? Have you eaten from the tree which I commanded that you should not eat?" Now God knows the answer. He knows the answer is yes. That's all all Adam has to say is, "Yes, God, it was me. I did it. I'm such a bozo. I can't believe I did it. Oh, I'm so wrong. I was so wrong. I should have spoken up to my wife. I should have said something. I should have said, 'Why are you talking to a talking serpent anyway?' That's just weird. That should be the first clue." How many of you have done something or not done something and you regret having done it or not done it? Anybody have experienced regret? We all do it. And so Adam is in this place where God is working with him, and he says, did you eat? And all Adam had to say was, yes. That's all he had to say. But is it that easy for Adam? No. Adam said, the man said, the woman whom you gave me. Does that not read like real life today? I think some of us guys, we got married just so we'd have someone to blame when things went wrong. I mean, look, I'm a reforming blamer. Any other guys with me in here? My go-to, if something goes wrong, is blame my wife. I am truly, I have some of that Adam nature still in me. Working against that every day. But look, he blames the woman whom you gave to be with me. She gave me of the tree, and I ate it. So he deflects his responsibility. He says, it's the woman, and it's you, God. It's your fault. You gave her to me. Go Adam. I mean, see, Eve was deceived. Adam ate willingly and knowingly. That's what 1 Timothy 2 says. Adam was not deceived, but the woman was deceived and fell into sin. Adam chose to please his wife over pleasing God. Can I say something very serious to husbands and wives? In your marriage, if you seek to please your spouse more than you seek to please God, you will destroy it. Then your spouse becomes your God, and it will never, ever, ever work. I love my wife. I want to please my wife in the things that are not matters of commandments before God. I mean, there's a lot of things I'm going to lay down my life and please my wife. I want to please my wife. But there are times when either spouse has to say, this is not right before God. This is not in alignment with God's word. And to bring that into the family. So 1 minute, Adam's writing poetry, singing songs over his wife. The next minute, he's throwing her under the bus, and now she's the object of blame and resentment. And the Lord said to the woman, what is this you have done? And the woman said, the serpent deceived me, and I ate. And she speaks honestly. She speaks openly. So now let me wrap this up. Look how the family shifted from its creation, its inception, where there was trust of God, trust of each other, openness, and humility. They were naked and not ashamed. That's humility. And now, after the fall, we see a family, Adam's family, built on distrust, secrecy, blame, and silence. And it's no wonder that by chapter 4, their brothers are killing each other. Well, the older brother kills the younger brother. I mean, it affects their children. And so here's the hope. Here's the hope. I told you I'd leave you on a hopeful note. Here's the hope. Adam was the champion of his family. He was the head of his family. He blew it. He disobeyed God, and he didn't trust God, and every human being that is born into that atmosphere of a distrust for God that brought condemnation and death and separation. And there is no amount of religion that can undo the fall. There's no amount of religion that can undo that. What you need, what I need, was to get out of Adam's family. See, the Bible says there's the first man, and that's Adam, and he blew it, right? Are you with me? Who's the second man? There's only 2 men that matter on the face of the earth. Jesus is the second man, and he said, I'm going to redeem humanity by starting a new family. And this family, I'm going to be the representative. Jesus says, this is what God looks like. This is how relationships work. And now I'm going to invite every human being that's part of that dysfunctional, fallen family and say, you know what? I'm going to invite you to be part of my family that's based in trust and love and communication and forgiveness and compassion. A redeemed humanity. That's what this is all about, not the hokey pokey. It's about being part of a redeemed family called the church, of whom Christ is the head, and not part of the fall. So today, as we close up, I appreciate your lengthy attention span. Next week, we'll do only 2 verses, so you'll get a break. But boy, I can stretch out 2 verses now. Don't tempt me. I want to invite you. It's not about religion. It's not about keeping rules. It's about being born again into the family of God, being part of the Jesus family. And if you've never done that, you may have been in church your whole life. You may have followed all the rules, carried the right Bible, worn the right clothes, whatever. What you need is a new head. You need Jesus. And I'm going to invite you, after we close down, I'll close in prayer. If you don't know Jesus as the head of your family, the head of your household, come running away from Adam and into Christ. Amen? Let's pray. Father, I hope I've done you justice, Father, by talking about your world and your kingdom and your family. I pray that you would do an awesome, deep work in our lives as we think on these things. Lord, I pray for the families here. I pray that for the husbands and the wives and the children, that we would all be just looking to you for our instruction and that you would be our help. It's in Jesus' name we pray. All God's people said, amen. Go in peace, church.